Stop! Unload and show clear.
Let's talk about this. All right, so obviously Ben Steger just posted this video here last couple days, and it's drawn a lot of controversy, especially in light of recently at Appendix Nationals, Buck Lawler also got DQ'd for a similar offense of drawing with appendix carry while facing the side berm, and he was DQ'd, and the logic used at the time was 10.5.16. So, and I have it straight from Buck Lawler himself. So he messaged me, he said, so officially they called 10.5.16 with an unloaded gun during his make ready. Once the RO yelled stop on his second practice draw while stepping down range into the shooting area, he asked him to step back and wind started and stay there. The RM was called. Once he arrived, he asked me to lift his shirt, so he did and was told to step off the line. We proceeded to discuss the rule, and the RM stated more than once that the DQ had nothing to do with the muzzle, but the fact that my sights were pointed uprange when I drew my gun. He read the rule and said, moving uprange or facing uprange doesn't matter, it's the sights on the gun as you draw, totally ignoring the second half of the rule that states you need to be facing or moving uprange to call this rule, and I was moving downrange when it was called. All right, so what is Buck talking about? What is everyone talking about when it comes to 10.5.16? So 10.5.16 states, when drawing a gun while facing downrange or moving uprange, and the front of the holster is pointing uprange beyond 90 degrees from the median intercept of the backstop. Okay, so there's a lot going on here with this rule. There's, first off, it's while the gun is being drawn is when this DQ could possibly apply. It has to be either while facing uprange or moving uprange. And so this is an operative clause. That means both the first clause and the second clause have to occur for the DQ to be valid. So, and the front of the holster is pointing uprange beyond 90 degrees from the median intercept of the backstop. All right, so there's been talks about, okay, what is the front of the holster, right? There's the definition of what is the front of the holster with appendix carry. Is it the side facing away from you? Is it the side with the iron sights on it? Is it the top of the slide? What is it, right? Honestly, that doesn't matter that much in this particular context, even though that's what's being argued about. Though we'll get more into that later. But there's an important distinction here. There's two clauses that have to be met. The first clause is while facing or moving uprange. Okay, so what has to be while facing or moving uprange? You, the competitor. Okay, so while the competitor is facing or moving uprange. Okay, so what is facing uprange? Well, we have a very strict definition for that. So if we go in the rule book, in the glossary, the rule book states the definition of facing uprange, which is the start position. So while you're drawing is what the definition of the start position is. It doesn't have to be defined in the WSB. It does not have to be defined in the WSB. The start position is where you start, is the start position. So the facing uprange is very strictly defined. Facing uprange means your face and feet pointing directly 180 degrees away from the backstop with shoulders and hips square to the backstop. Okay, so that's very specific. Your entire body has to be facing directly uprange to qualify as facing uprange. So in Ben Steger's video, that shooter was not facing uprange and he was stationary, so he wasn't moving uprange. So 10.5.16 does not apply. Okay, so the next question is, does the front of the holster matter in any other context? Okay, so we'll go back before we go check out any other rules. Let's see what does the NROI have to say about this subject? Okay, because that there's some confusing. This is kind of a confusing subject, confusing rules. Because right, so first of all, what is the front of the holster? Okay, front of the holster, especially with appendix carry being a new thing, relatively new thing for our sport. People shooting it more often in our sport. So what is that? What is that? Okay, so here in the NROI blog, which, by the way, the NROI blog is not an official ruling. It's just guidance into how you might interpret the rules. Nothing on the NROI blog is actually official per the official USPSA rules and how to interpret the rulebook. Okay, so on February 16th of 2023, they say, so drawing a pistol from a holster while facing up range is a disqualification, right? That's 10.5.16, right? So we just read that rule, okay? So what does that mean? So this rule not only applies to facing up range starts, but also to any other time a holstered pistol is being drawn during a course of fire. That's not correct. That is not correct. We go back to 10.5.16. The only other time when it's not facing directly uprange is when you're moving uprange. Okay, so the NROI is already on here in February 2023, is saying that it applies at any other time during the course of fire that the holster is being drawn, that the pistol is being drawn. So this at least this blog post written in 2023 is incorrect and is in violation of the rule book. Okay. So, all right, let's talk about Troy's article in the Front Sight magazine. So he wrote an article in September and October 2024. So this is going to be after Carry Optics Nationals, where Buck Lawler got DQ'd, where, again, he got cited 10.5.16 in person. And so since there was a big controversy about it back then, Troy obviously would probably like to clarify what is the front of the holster to the shooting community. That would make sense, right? So he wanted to clarify that to the community. So obviously writing an article to Front Sight makes sense to do that. All right, Troy says, while USPSA rules allow for inside the waistband carry, the rules also specify that the front of the holster must be past the 180 or 90 degree intercept before the gun is drawn. This is covered in a couple of rules, one specific for uprange starts and movement, 10.5.16, which we've already discussed, and the other for general safety, 10.5.2. The 180 rule. Okay, so 10.5.2 must have something to do with the front of the holster, right? Okay, so for USPSA purposes, the front of the holster is the side where the front sight is and not the side facing away from the competitor. All right, so that's a fine and dandy definition. So the NROI and must be, is clearly implying here within this article and within the other blog posts that the front of the holster has something to do with 10.5.2 and has to do with drawing at other periods of time. So we're going to look at 10.5.2 and DQs relating to that, right? So what do these things have to say? All right, so we go back to the rule book. Okay, 10.5.2 states, if at any time during the course of fire, a competitor allows the muzzle of his firearm to point rearwards, that is further than 90 degrees from the median intercept of the backstop, or in the case of no backstop, technical difficulties, allows the muzzle to point uprange whether the firearm is loaded or not. Okay, so with limited exceptions being 10.5.6. So there's no mention of the front of the holster. So let's go look at 10.5.6. So 10.5.2 is the 180 rule, and it only mentions the muzzle, the direction that the muzzle is pointed. No mention of the holster and where the holster is pointed. Okay, let's go look at this 10.5.6 exception. Okay, the 10.5.6 exception is while facing downrange, allowing the muzzle of a loaded firearm to point uprange beyond a radius of 3 feet from a competitor's feet while drawing or reholstering. So while facing downrange, let's see if there's a definition here. Okay, so facing downrange is not facing uprange. Any position facing sideberms or backstop within 90 degrees of the median intercept of the backstop. Okay, so in the case of both Buck Lawler and the competitor in Ben Steger's video, they were both facing downrange, allowing the muzzle of the loaded firearm to point uprange beyond a radius of 3 feet of the competitor's feet. So that means you're allowed to while drawing or reholstering, point the gun 3 feet uprange within a 3-foot radius of your feet uprange. Okay, the reason for that is just to deal with just oddities in holsters and so on. Okay, there's nothing special about that. So for appendix carry people, if you can draw and keep your muzzle within 3 feet of yourself and not break the 180 as you push out from there, you're fine per 10.5.2 and 10.5.6. Okay. So we go back to 10.5.16. Go back to 10.5.16. So again, the cases are only while facing directly uprange, because remember, facing uprange is strictly defined as facing directly uprange or moving uprange. Okay, let's go back to Troy's article. Okay, so again, Troy implies that 10.5.2 also covers the front of the holster, which is not true. We've gone over this now. And also, the blog post in February of last year implied that 10.5.16 covers drawing at any time, which is not true. We've gone over this per the rule book. Okay, for USPSA purposes, the front of the holster is the side where the front sight is, not the side facing away from the competitor. All right, so that's a simple definition. That's a fine definition. That's perfectly fine and acceptable. It's the side where the front sight is. Okay, so there are some slight issues with this. Okay, so first off, there's no official ruling on this. This is just an opinion article inside of the Front Sight magazine. Especially for both a safety rule and a DQ rule, this is definitely something that should be a ruling that Troy presents to the board, that the board then votes on and is then put to record for the membership to actually know about. Okay, and especially since both the Front Sight and the NROI blog is not official rulings, not official interpretations for rules. Okay, so that's issue number one. Issue number two. Many carry optics and optics gun competitors don't have front sights on their slides. Okay, so that's another technical issue is technically there's no front sight. So which side is it? Okay, so you can argue it's the side that the OEM manufacturer intended for there to be a front sight. All right, so, well, there's some 2011 makers now that intentionally don't intend for front sights at all. They just build it for for limited optics. Okay. Right. So here's the predicament we get in, right? So, all right. So we're diving into the weeds here, but anyway, so going back, before we really dive into the weeds there on that specific definition, that definition doesn't even matter, right? Because like we've said, we've gone over 10.5.2 and 10.5.6. 10.5.2 and 10.5.6 only talk about the muzzle, have nothing to do with the front of the holster, the direction of the holster, or your hips, other than facing downrange. And 10.5.16 requires you to be facing uprange or moving uprange while drawing the holster. And facing uprange is defined as facing directly uprange. Okay, so if you're an appendix carry person and somebody tries to DQ you for drawing, tries to DQ you under 10.5.16 especially for drawing, when you're not facing directly uprange or moving, I'm sorry, but 10.5.16 does not apply because this entire first clause, this clause right here, does not apply. So this and statement goes away. Okay? So this clause doesn't exist. And this whole front side of the holster thing only applies to 10.5.16. It does not apply to 10.5.2 and 10.5.6. Despite what the NROI has been interpreting and training ROs at major matches and RMs to arbitrate. Okay, so that's the problem at hand here, guys. Obviously, that's the current rule and how they're enforcing it. So yeah, follow that. But please write the board of directors and tell them to fix this situation. All right, so how would I fix this situation? How would I rewrite the rules to fix this situation? So first off, we need a ruling on what is the definition of the front of the holster if we're going to continue with this rule. Okay, we need a definition of that. Second of all, we need to tell the entire RO, like everyone within the RO community that's been trained, RO, CROs, RMs, all of them need to be trained that 10.5.2 and 10.5.6 have absolutely nothing to do with the front of the holster, despite what they've been told. Okay. They also need to be told that 10.5.16 only has to do with facing and moving uprange, only during that time. Okay. All right. And then the board has to, and the rules committee need to define what is the front of the holster in a meaningful way if they keep with this definition. And here's what I would recommend. Here's how I would rewrite 10.5.16 to keep it as intended, as originally intended, but updated in a way that makes sense and actually cares about it. Because here's the deal. Why do we care about where the holster is pointing when what we actually care about is where the barrel is pointing? Okay? Like, honest question. Why do we care about where the holster is pointing ever? Like, why? What I care about is, are you pointing your barrel at me? Not, are you pointing your holster at me? Right? It's a serious question. So, okay. How would I rewrite 10.5.16? So here's how I would rewrite it. I would rewrite it. The first clause, I would say, drawing a handgun while facing directly uprange and or moving uprange And in the second clause, I would delete the whole point about the front of the holster pointing up range, and I would change it to like the competitor is facing up range. So just change it to while facing up range, like while the competitor is facing up range, and that's it. And that basically you can just delete that. Like while they're, basically either rewrite it to where your hips or whatever, like while your body is positioned, while your hips are, essentially rewrite it in a way that like, are your hips facing up range, right? Or just, delete it all together. So delete the second phrase and just make it while facing or moving up range, right? Like that's while facing directly up range or moving up range. And that's all 10.5.16 should be, right? And front of the holster shouldn't matter worth a damn, okay? There's next question is like, people talk about is obviously we don't want people who are concealed carrying, doing appendix carry, to draw on the weak side and point their gun at the peanut gallery. Of course not, right? Like we don't want to encourage that. Obviously 10.5.2 still applies. They would be DQ'd for that. So we'd have to, as an RO and as a community, be telling people that if you're an appendix carry person and you're lining up on the weak side as a start position, that like, hey, be careful. If you're going to start in that position, you better be damn careful not to point your gun in the right direction. So, all right. So there's another rule about that. I believe it is. Okay. 861. 861. Here is where we can, as a community and as ROs, give safety warnings to appendix carry people when they're lined up in a manner that they might draw and point up range. 861. No assistance of any kind can be given to a competitor during a course of fire except that any RO assigned to a stage may issue safety warnings to a competitor at any time. Such warnings will not be grounds for the competitor to be awarded a reshoot. Obviously, we don't want to abuse that for things like, calling out trigger or muzzle during the course of fire. But, if somebody is obviously setting up to do something dumb, like we don't want people to get shot. We're playing a game with guns. Yes, it's a game, but they're guns that can actually do serious bodily harm. Like, as an RO myself, I don't stand on the 180 just begging, looking to DQ people because I don't want to be shot. I would rather stand way the fuck back and let somebody slightly break the 180, and because I didn't see it as well, then have them point the gun at me at 185 degrees, and just so I can get the DQ. And that, I don't want to play that game because I don't want to get shot and I don't want them to shoot anybody. So yeah, let's just actually use 861 for cases like appendix carry on the weak side draw. Okay. Simple as. All right. If you guys have any questions, any comments, please feel free to message me. Link it down below in the comment section. Please email your area director. Tell them 8.5.16 needs to be updated and that the NROI needs to be fixed on this issue. The fact that they have these secret interpretations that only the RMs and major match staff are aware of is utter bullshit, to excuse the French, but it is. So please contact your area director. And I will say, I have been negative towards USPSA in the past, but the current area directors and the current board, like, they are doing really positive things, and they are making progress, and we do got to applaud them. Things are looking good, and things are looking up for USPSA. So let's make the sport great again.